Yo, today I'm going to react to Skitty Bitties. I Hate Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is one of my favorite games to play. So let's just get right into the video. Three hours long. I'm gonna have to split this into multiple episodes.
On May 12, 2023, Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I still haven't forgiven them. Just over a year ago, I started working on a video essay about Breath of the Wild. I know, it's never been done. That video, somewhere between a retrospective and a love letter, never got made. And while it's still something I'd like to make eventually, I'm not in a rush anymore. That initial sense of urgency stemmed from a fear that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be so good that there would be no reason to play Breath of the Wild ever again after it came out. That is not what happened. And now it feels like I can't make that video, not without talking about Tears of the Kingdom first. Because my dream Breath of the Wild retrospective exists in a world without Tears of the Kingdom. When I make that video, I'm going to be pretending that Tears of the Kingdom doesn't exist. And in order to do that, I need to have already said everything I need to say about this game. And I do have a lot to say, in no small part because I love the game that it's at least ostensibly a sequel to. Since I started work on this project in earnest, more and more people have begun to come out of the woodwork to express their disappointment with Tears of the Kingdom, to the point that some people are quick to label the game's critics as bad faith, nitpicking, hating on something that's popular because it's popular, and I'll never deny that those people are out there. But I want to be very clear that the reason it's taken me over a year to make this video is not because I'm clout chasing. I spent the past year pouring hundreds of hours into this game.
I have 5 profiles on my Switch. This is just the hours clocked on my main one. It doesn't include the about 100 hours I spent playing in order to get the footage for this video.
Playing and replaying every single shrine, taking notes, talking to friends, refining my thoughts, it was all leading up to this. All of this is just to say that I hated Tears of the Kingdom before it was cool, and I hate it in a different and specialer way than everyone else. Before we found out the actual name of the game, Tears of the Kingdom was the sequel to Breath of the Wild, or Breath of the Wild 2. Everything the game had going for it was predicated on its status as a sequel to Breath of the Wild, but the final product felt less like a sequel and more like a second draft, to the point that it's not even clear whether the events of Breath of the Wild as we experienced them even happened. Tears of the Kingdom is at its strongest when you're not thinking about Breath of the Wild, but I'm always thinking about Breath of the Wild. It consumes my every waking moment, and I'll never be free. I saw this cafe in the Prague airport and went, ooh. Anyway, this video is made with people who've played Tears of the Kingdom in mind. You're more than welcome to watch this video if you haven't played the game, and I'll be providing context where it's needed, but if you care about spoilers, consider this your warning.
Yeah.
I also know that many of you are going to be listening to this video rather than watching it. With that in mind, when you hear this sound, it means there's text on screen or some other visual element that I feel is important. It's obviously just a suggestion, but I spent literally hundreds of hours editing this video, and it moves at such a pace that important quotes or visuals that I spent an inordinately long time working on are sometimes only on screen for a few seconds, so you can feel free to take that into consideration, or not. I'm not the boss of you. Now, without further ado, let's skydive into my critique of The Legend of Zelda Tears of Me personally.
Nice. Really nice. I love it. That kazoo is very annoying.
Secret stone.
The kazoo is really annoying.
Only I can do.
Tears of the Kingdom.
There is nothing I can say that will make you understand how badly I wanted to love this game. Breath of the Wild is hardly perfect, but it's still a game that I really love, and in the months leading up to Tears of the Kingdom's release, I spent countless hours imagining what its sequel would be like. What you need to understand is that we knew nothing going into this game. We got the 10-minute gameplay demo and a handful of trailers, but those didn't really give us a sense of what the game would actually be like. If Tears of the Kingdom was even a fraction as good as its final trailer, I would not be making this video.
Yeah, true. I love that trailer.
That leak didn't spoil much of anything. My only takeaways from it were that this guy is named Rauru and that there was going to be cheese. Game of the year incoming? Just kidding. Game of the Year is a meaningless distinction, and if you care about the Game Awards, you need to get some bit. Getting excited about new video games is very rare for me. I'm someone who typically believes that the only way to avoid disappointment with a new game is to go in with zero expectations. Being a Pokemon fan for most of your life will do that to you. But it was
Fair, being a Pokemon fan for most of your life.
borderline impossible not to fantasize about Tears of the Kingdom. I wasn't one of the people who complained about the combat or the weapon durability back in the Breath of the Wild era. Honestly, neither of those things really bothered me, but I did think there needed to be expanded dungeon content, more challenging and creative shrines, better writing, and some elaboration on the many questions raised by Breath of the Wild through its environmental storytelling choices.
Really, yeah.
What was the purpose of the Forgotten Temple? What was the deal with the Typhlo ruins, or the mazes, or Linear Promenade, or the massive Leviathan skeletons? What was the deal with the dragons, the Guardians of the Springs? Springs that happen to match up strikingly well with their counterparts from Skyward Sword. What is Malice? Is it alive? Can it think? Hopefully you didn't care too much about these questions, because Tears of the Kingdom is not interested in even acknowledging them, let alone answering them. But we'll get to that. My point is that there was a lot of cause for excitement in the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom.
I'm sorry. What did that say?
But we'll get to that.
Fun game. Count how many times I say we'll get to that, or we'll talk about this later in this video. Chat, comments, I want to see the answer to this question in the comments. You got this, man.
My point is that there was a lot of cause for excitement in the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom's release, but then something very tragic happened. The game came out.
The game came
Tears of
out.
the Kingdom came out during finals season. I finished up my classes and I finally got my hands on the game. I started up the game and, oh hey, it's the full version of that teaser from 2019. Cool. Zelda's being cute, her girlfriend carries her torch for her so that she can take pictures on her iPhone, Mummy Ganon wakes up. So far so good. The Master Sword explodes, Zelda falls into the abyss, much to my chagrin. Link gets grabbed by a magic hand, shit starts going crazy outside. Cut to Link waking up with a brand new arm and we all know what happens next.
Shit does really go crazy.
I'm neither ashamed nor too proud to admit that I cried watching this intro. For all this game gets wrong, it never misses the mark when it comes to spectacle, accentuated by the game's incredible score. What's about to unfold is disappointing enough to warrant a thesis-length critique, but every time I watch this scene, I'm transported back to the first time I saw it, and that feeling, or even just the memory of that feeling, still kinda gets me. What follows is essentially just a rehash of Breath of the Wild's tutorial, but I'm not mad about it. It was decent for what it was, and the sky as a setting is beautiful. So you talk to a Ghost King, again, go to 4 shrines and get your abilities, again, and then the king disappears while urging you to go save Zelda, again. The Master Sword gets sent back in time, we see Zelda receive it in the past, and it is at this point that the game completely falls apart. In Breath of the Wild, the ghost of King Rome tells you that it would be a bad idea to go try and beat Ganon immediately. The player is encouraged to spend their time getting stronger, whether that's through exploring, completing the shrines, freeing the divine beasts, all of those things, or none of them. You can go directly to Ganon, but there isn't the sense of urgency. If there were, there'd be a massive disconnect between Link's goal of defeating Ganon as quickly as possible, and the player's goal of experiencing this massive world and all that it has to offer. I'm going to be mostly avoiding game design jargon in this video, because if you have to explain every single piece of terminology you want to use every single time you want to use it, it's not a helpful piece of terminology. Having said that, yes, I do know that there's a term for that disconnect, and yes, I do know that it's called ludonarrative dissonance, so you can stop typing. I bring this up because the quest you get at the end of Tears of the Kingdom's tutorial is Find Zelda, a significant departure from Breath of the Wild's Destroy Ganon. The fundamental problem here is that Link, the character, wants to find Zelda as soon as possible, but you, the player, want to fuck around and build cars. The pretense Tears of the Kingdom gives you for exploring Hyrule is investigating what happened to Zelda by visiting the same 4 regions you visited in Breath of the Wild, all of which are currently experiencing some sort of crisis. There isn't even a mention of defeating Ganondorf until after you've cleared the 4 main temples, and that means your only stated long-term goal for the majority of the game is to figure out where Zelda is and what happened to her, which wouldn't be an issue except for the fact that the player already knows where Zelda is. We know instantly from this scene that she's fine. She's in the past, but Link doesn't know that. As far as he's concerned, Zelda's missing. She's possibly dead. There are real stakes here, personal stakes for Link, but the player's not worried about Zelda because she's obviously fine. Look, she's right there. But okay, I hear you. Maybe you didn't realize this scene takes place in the past, and there's no guarantee that this Zelda is our Zelda. After all, Zelda gets reincarnated all the time, so it's not impossible that we're seeing her distant ancestor here or something. And even if you know she's in the past, that doesn't explain how she got there or how exactly you're meant to find her. Unfortunately, Link finding out what happened to Zelda doesn't change anything. I'm remaining vague here on purpose because we'll get into this when we discuss the story. But for now, just keep in mind that the very premise of the adventure you're about to set out on is shaky at best and completely worthless at worst. Hi there, it's me during the editing process. You may notice that my mic sounds pretty good for someone who's never made one of these here videos before. The bad news is that I figured it out hundreds of hours into the editing process, and I need to get on a plane in a few days. I'm not going to be in the country for the next month, and if I want this video to come out before that, which I do, I just need to release it as it is. But it's okay. If it's not finished, that's no big deal. You get to watch this video for free. Tears of the Kingdom wasn't finished, and that game cost $70. Right after that scene with the Master Sword, you're finally granted access to the surface of Hyrule, and the world is yours to explore.
Oh.
Sort of. You're still missing your paraglider, which Breath of the Wild gave you at the end of the tutorial. And given the emphasis this game places on vertical exploration, you're not actually free to explore the world until you manage to get your hands on it. So you land in the conspicuous new body of water, make a big splash, and make your way to Lookout Landing, your de facto base of operations in this game. Lookout Landing is a completely new settlement added to Tears of the Kingdom on top of what used to be the Sacred Ground ruins.
Yeah.
And I don't have much to say about it. My first time playing this game, I didn't even realize this shelter area existed, and it didn't make any difference whatsoever. This location has the bare minimum amount of personality and identity, and talking to the people here mostly serves to fool you into thinking that the characters in this game remember who Link is. Overwhelmingly, when you meet an NPC in Tears of the Kingdom for the first time, even if you already met them in Breath of the Wild, they act like this is the first time you've ever met. And there are weird exceptions to this too. Hudson remembers you because you helped him build Terry Town, but in order for Hudson to have built Terry Town, Link needs to have bought the house from Bolson first, who doesn't remember Link. And even if a character doesn't personally remember meeting Link, are we seriously meant to believe that they don't recognize the guy who saved the entire goddamn world, like, within the past few years? In a world that has a newspaper? In Breath of the Wild, people were still discussing the champions 100 years later, but people don't recognize Link? Is he Tony Hawk? Even new players know that this is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, so the fear of alienating new players isn't a good enough reason to have almost everyone treat you like a stranger. But, okay. You arrive at Lookout Landing, and you're immediately given the runaround. Purah gives you a recap of the events you literally just experienced that's so unnecessary it would make Persona 5 blush. Then she sends you over to Hyrule Castle to talk to a handful of other characters who really don't matter, and then you go back to Lookout Landing, at which point she activates the new Sheikah Towers, and then finally hands over the glider. This whole sequence was pretty shitty and boring, but I held on to hope. I'd been looking forward to this game for 6 years, and I knew exactly where I wanted to go first. Typhlo Ruins. In Breath of the Wild, Typhlo Ruins was a location that absolutely...
Why do you have to do all that to get the paraglider? That is the most stupid quest line to get the paraglider.
Captivated me. It was shrouded in complete darkness, filled with animal statues and architecture reminiscent of the 3 massive labyrinths, which were themselves a huge unsolved mystery. In the final 2...
In Breath of the Wild, the ruins that she was just talking about is where you learn where what the Zonai are. That was where the ancient Zonai's structure and stuff was.
Tears of the Kingdom trailer, we got a few seconds of footage showing the area with the lights on, and that was it. I knew I had to go there first. So I did. I made my way north until I arrived at the ruins. And what I found there was a Skyview Tower. No story, no secrets. There weren't even any monsters to fight, and no, the constructs don't count. Before you try to tell me that actually there is content there, in a sense you're technically correct. You can come back here after you finish the 4 main temples and do some absolutely asinine tasks to reveal, like, a handful of gemstones, and like what, an amiibo item from Breath of the Wild, and some exposition written on a slab? This is a far cry from something like an involved puzzle, or story section, or even a shrine. This did not do it for me, but I was still determined to find something interesting, so I headed west. It wasn't far from the ruins to the North Lome Labyrinth, and throughout the trailers I'd seen the mazes inexplicably floating in the sky. That had to be something, right? Yeah. So I made it to the labyrinth, and I was disappointed but not surprised to find that the layout of the maze hadn't changed between the 2 games. Having played Breath of the Wild to death, I quickly dropped into the maze and found the shrine.
Okay, so I don't understand why they would change it. Because if it's the same spot, the same maze in different game, but the same spot, same maze, same world, why would they change it at that point? At that point, leave it the same, because the mazes are similar. The mazes are supposed to be the same mazes. So, that's why.
Immediately. Even if I hadn't, by the way, there are pine cones conveniently placed in a line throughout the maze so you don't get lost, which is kind of the whole point of a maze, but I digress. There was a terminal to activate, and when I did, I received a new quest telling me to explore the sky level of the maze. At that point, I hadn't explored the sky at all yet, so I bookmarked it in the back of my head for later and pressed onwards, but my disappointment was growing. My next stop was the Forgotten Temple. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, in Breath of the Wild, this place was super interesting. It took clear design inspiration from Skyward Sword, complete with a massive goddess statue, somewhere that you'd expect to be a site of great significance, but it's hidden away at the bottom of the game's deepest canyon. On top of that, the place was filled with guardians, and the Breath of the Wild art book Creating a Champion confirmed that the royal family of Hyrule had placed them there intentionally. So what were they there for? What were the guardians guarding? It was one of many areas in Breath of the Wild that was disappointing because there was nothing there, but that still presented some interesting questions for the sequel to answer. I arrived at the temple and, as I had anticipated, the Guardians had been cleared out along with the rest of the Sheikah Tech in the world. In its place, though, was nothing. Maybe there was a handful of low-level monsters sitting around a campfire, or like a Korok, but certainly nothing that even came close to filling up the massive, now empty rooms. But then I found the giant goddess statue toppled over, and behind her I saw a door leading to a new area. Beyond it was an altar with these pedestals surrounding it. My heart was racing. Was this place going to be the site of some sort of epic story moment later in the game? Were they going to make the Forgotten Temple into an actual dungeon? No. This room exists solely to show you where to find the memory cutscenes. I didn't realize there was nothing here at the time, though, so I took what I thought was a W and...
I hated the Forgotten Temple.
Decided to take on one of the dungeons. It's going to be a while before we talk about the dungeons in detail, but suffice it to say, I was not impressed.
I remember hearing during the build-up to this game that Tears of the Kingdom brings Zelda dungeons back, and I'd like to find whoever started that rumor so I can punch them in the gut for lying.
I was beginning to feel nervous. The Great Sky Island had been a fun take on the Breath of the Wild gameplay formula, but if this is what the rest of the game was going to be like, I might be in for a rough time. I made my way over to the Hebra Sky Maze that wasn't too far away from the Wind Temple. I interacted with the terminal, the giant door slid open with some vague words about a test of wisdom, but the thing that got my attention was the mention of the Ruler of Owls. What was that? Was I finally going to discover...
Is it that's the leader from Breath of the Wild, right? The owl guy.
Or something of substance? I was disappointed to discover that the only thing you actually do in the Sky Maze is glide around and activate some terminals, all of which are already marked on your map. So not only was the maze on the ground a total letdown, the maze in the sky wasn't much better either. At the end of the Sky Maze, the chasm leading below ground opened up, and I was instructed to skydive from up high to down below as a test of courage. On my most recent playthrough, my friend was watching me play this part, and she made a great observation. From Link's perspective, skydiving from such a height would probably be terrifying, but the player does this all the time, so it doesn't actually feel like a test of courage. So I skydived down and arrived in a third version of the labyrinth, this one located in the game's hellish underworld, the Depths. It was there that I found a recycled mini-boss from the tutorial island.
Oh,
Yay!
no.
Once I defeated it, I was able to activate yet another terminal and was told I'd be granted a rare piece of armor, cloaked in otherworldly evil. The pedestal with the treasure chest rose up from the ground. I went to open it, and... Are you kidding me? This can't be serious. They cannot be serious. The payoff to all of this is recycled DLC armor from Breath of the Wild? I could forgive the underwhelming ground maze. I could forgive the underwhelming sky maze. I could even forgive the recycled boss fight. But this? This is my reward? Armor that you can't even upgrade? If they were gonna recycle armor from Breath of the Wild, which is already lazy on the face of it, why not the Barbarian armor? That would have made sense. You got the Barbarian armor from the mazes in Breath of the Wild. Phantom fucking Ganon from Ocarina of Time? What does this have to do with this maze, with the Ruler of Owls, with anything? Worst of all, this was just one piece of an armor set, meaning the other two mazes would reward me with the other two pieces. I cannot possibly overstate how disappointed I was by this. This moment radicalized me. I knew in that moment that this game was the worst case scenario for a sequel to Breath of the Wild. And as you can probably tell by the length of this video, I mean that in just about every way imaginable. From here on out, I'm going to be breaking down all of my issues with Tears of the Kingdom in the hopes of finally getting some closure with this game. They aren't making DLC for it apparently, so hopefully once this video is out, I'll have all of this out of my system, I won't have to think about the game ever again, and I can go back to playing Breath of the Wild in peace.
Wait.
Okay, I lied a little. Before I can start ripping into this game, I need to address something. In the minute-to-minute experience...
There's no DLC? Sorry, my game's lagging. Or, not my game, my YouTube's lagging. There's
With
no
this out of
DLC.
my system, I won't have to think about the game ever again, and I can go back to playing
Since when is there no DLC?
Breath of the Wild in peace. Okay, I lied a little. Before I can start ripping into this game, I need to address something. In the minute-to-minute experience, yes, Tears of the Kingdom can be a fun game. It's fun to run around and build silly contraptions. It's fun to fly around on the Zonai plains. It's fun to walk around on the dragons.
Yeah.
In fact, here's a handful of other things I liked about this game, just to head this off at the pass. The music is obviously great. Kataoka does a fantastic job, and I think it's always awesome to see a woman at the helm of a AAA video game soundtrack. Being able to throw items is great. It's one of the vanishingly few things I really miss when I go back to playing Breath of the Wild. Similarly, the ability to freely move and especially rotate objects you pick up with Ultra Hand is just flat out better than how they handled Magnesis in Breath of the Wild. Another improvement is the ability to instantly swap out an item when you open a chest and your inventory is full. I like that you can upgrade horses, even if there's never a reason to ride them. More on this in a minute. I like that you can view the pictures you've taken in full screen. The descriptions for the various recipes are silly, and they added fucked up and evil food, which is objectively hilarious. I love the way ice interacts with lava and water. It makes perfect sense that the mechanic works this way, and it feels very Zelda. I think the dragon armor sets are super cute, even if their set effects and bonuses are trash. I like the areas with low gravity. It's a small change, but it does a lot to shake up game feel. I wish they used it more and in more interesting ways. I love the constructs. They're super cute and have a surprising amount of personality. Skydiving is executed pretty much perfectly. It's exhilarating and satisfying, even if I'll argue in a few minutes it pretty much ruins the world design, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Proving Ground shrines are great, especially compared to the resource-wasting snooze fest Test of Strength shrines from Breath of the Wild. Speaking of shrines, the shrine names come from real-life places in Kyoto with their names scrambled. Check out this map. I think that's sick. I love the final boss and the ending sequence, even if I don't feel like it's earned in context. I like that Raru's a goat dude and he's got goat mannerisms. I love the shot composition in the cutscenes. I love the costume and character design. Hey, did I mention that this game's pretty? Like, really fucking pretty? In a win for gay people everywhere, Zelda is taller than Link in this game. If you do this, you can pick a whole bunch of apples really, really fast. My point in going through this list is just to say that I don't think the game is all bad, and it's lazy to write off my criticism by saying, oh, well, it's just not for you. I really wanted to love this game. I've loved the Zelda series for as long as I can remember, and despite my issues with it, I love Breath of the Wild. The issue with Tears of the Kingdom is not that it's not for me, because Breath of the Wild was very much for me, and Tears of the Kingdom is just that game again. No, the issue with Tears of the Kingdom is that the game does not justify its own existence. This is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, a separate video game that took 6 years to make, and cost $70, the most expensive Switch game to date. The good things about Tears of the Kingdom are, in fact, good, but are they 6 years good? Are they $70 good? Keep these questions in mind as you watch this video. If you love Tears of the Kingdom, great! I love My Sims Party. Enjoying a video game does not make the video game good. I'm not trying to take your love of the game away from you, and while I'm definitely a hater, I'm not just a hater. If I didn't care about this series, I would not be making this video. Long disclaimer out of the way, let's get this show properly on the road. There is a non-zero percentage of you that are watching this video without having played Tears of the Kingdom. I'll take this opportunity to explain what Link's main abilities are in this game, which will also give me a chance to talk about some of the problems with them. Ultra Hand is the signature ability of the game. It allows you to pick objects up, rotate them, and stick them together. This is what lets you build stuff. It's a cool idea. Being able to manipulate almost any item in the world gives you a ton of flexibility, but as we'll discuss, this game doesn't really do anything interesting with it. It's also super janky. Nerl said it best when he said that for every 10 seconds of doing cool shit, there's 10 minutes of trying to get a wheel to stick in the right place. Fuse is the ability you will likely use most throughout the game, as it allows you to attach monster parts, materials, and even bits of the environment to your weapons and arrows, making them more powerful and also more durable. This only works to a point. Fusing something to your weapon doesn't repair it or anything, it just adds some attack power to it and maybe a few more swings if you're lucky. Also, despite its widespread use in combat and just general play, you almost never use it to solve puzzles. Needing to use fuse to make a fire arrow does not mean it's a puzzle that uses fuse, it's just a puzzle that uses a fire arrow with extra steps, and I do mean extra steps. Ascend is pretty simple. If you're standing under a ceiling or overhang, you can jump up and swim through it. This totally changes how you think about enclosed spaces like buildings or caves, and it's a mechanic I'm actually pretty fond of for the most part. Far too often the game will cut to this stock animation of Link swimming through the void in order to have enough time to render the world on the other side, and it does this even when it really shouldn't need to the point where it becomes pretty distracting. The ability also isn't super consistent. Sometimes you'll be able to ascend through a ceiling, but only while standing in a seemingly pixel-perfect position, which leads to a lot of fiddling around with Link to get him in just the right spot. Other than that, though, I don't have any big issues with it, and I think it's pretty neat. Recall allows you to reverse an object's movement in time. You can use this to return projectiles to sender, ride those falling rocks up into the sky, solve puzzles, rescue something you accidentally dropped into the abyss, and that's about it really. Wait, how could I forget the most important use of Recall, making gears spin backwards. This is so cool, I'm so glad they had me do this over and over and over and over again. Recall is incredibly powerful, but also criminally underutilized, and a lot of the puzzles in this game are seemingly set up without taking Recall into account. It's very easy to use Ultra Hand to move a platform up for a second, then lower it back down, climb on, and use Recall on it. You can use this to skip all sorts of puzzles, which I've seen a good number of people praise actually, but I maintain that if you peel all the stickers off a Rubik's Cube and stick them back on so the cube looks completed, you didn't solve the Rubik's Cube. The last ability is the only one you don't get as part of the tutorial. It's called Auto Build, and it allows you to save things you've built to a submenu and easily recreate them. This is a very solid idea with some absolutely awful implementation, something we'll talk about in the next section. When you're building with Auto Build, Link can pick up and use items in his immediate vicinity. If you're building something that calls for an item or material that isn't right there in front of you, you can use Zonite, one of the game's currencies, to generate the needed materials from scratch. These materials you purchase with Zonite are colored a solid green and can't be moved or adjusted once they're placed.
Yeah. Yep.
They'll just disappear if you try. You can also only save 8 builds to your favorite section, which is really not that many. It would have been nice to be able to upgrade your capacity for custom schematics, especially in a game that everyone seems to insist is about creativity. Also, for obvious reasons, you can't use auto build in shrines. I think this is a decent batch of abilities with some major sticking points. Apparently this game was finished a year before it was released.
Breath became the most successful title in the series with about 30 million copies sold, creating especially high expectations for Tears. It was supposed to be out by last year, but in March 2022, Anonymous had to announce its delay to make sure everything in the game was 100% to our standards, he said.
And they spent the final year on just polish. And I honestly find that hard to believe, because this game shipped with a user interface and control scheme so unpolished that I genuinely can't believe people playtested this and then allowed it to be released in this state. Spoiler alert, that's what the next section's about.
More like
Breath of the Wild was designed with the Wii U in mind. This is the necessary starting point for any discussion of the user interface in these games, because the Wii U's main gimmick was the gamepad. This thing is like the result of illicit breeding between a Wii Classic controller and an iPad. It was an absolute nightmare to develop games for, but honestly, when it worked, it really worked. The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess remakes on the Wii U integrated the gamepad for real-time inventory management, and if Breath of the Wild hadn't had its gamepad features nuked from orbit, the Wii U version of the game would...
Having to bring Breath of the Wild to Switch wasn't a huge surprise. We knew about the hardware. We thought it's probably gonna come. Oh, and here it is. But it was a big undertaking, and it meant that Nintendo had to scrap all the ideas they had for the Wii U's gamepad controller, like a separate map and a different control scheme.
Probably outclass the Switch version, which is probably why they made that
Yeah.
choice. Tears of the Kingdom's user interface is just an updated version of the Breath of the Wild user interface, which was already outdated when the game released on the Switch in 2017. Rather than overhauling it for the new game, they left most of the menuing unchanged, and in some cases they made it worse. Quick selecting weapons and items was quick and snappy in Breath of the Wild, but there's a brief pause before the menu comes up in Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm not sure why. In Breath of the Wild, you could also use the L, R, ZL, and ZR buttons to scroll through the quick menu, and for some reason they took that out for Tears, which makes no sense considering the amount of scrolling you'll be doing in this game. Which brings me back to Fuse. First of all, there's no way to set types of arrows like in previous Zelda games, or even like in Breath of the Wild, which means you'll be making every single fire arrow, bomb arrow, whatever, every single time you want to use one. Your list of items is just a single continuous hotbar of everything you've ever collected, and there's no way to fuse stuff from the menu. In order to fuse something to your weapon or shield, you need to take out the item you want to fuse, drop it on the ground, switch to the weapon or shield you want to fuse to if you're not already holding it, activate fuse, and then press the weapon or shield button every single time. This is especially bad during combat because fusing mid-battle is extremely clunky, especially since there will almost always be monster parts or weapons or plants lying around that you can end up fusing to your weapons by accident. I don't understand how this is considered acceptable. Link can eat hundreds of apples in an entire raw chicken in the menu, but he can't use his weapons there? This system discourages players from experimenting with Fuse because of how much scrolling you'll have to do to find new items to use. With over 250 material types in this game, this is in no way a sustainable system, especially without some sort of favorites tab to pin specific items for easy access. Auto build is possibly even worse. Like I said, you can use auto build to reassemble builds you've made, using either Zonite or the materials lying around in the overworld. The thing is, Link can carry Zonite devices and materials in his inventory, but there's no way to have auto build use those resources. You can't even open the menu to take them out while auto build is active. You need to stop, cancel auto build, take out the items you need, drop them on the ground, God help you if you're on a slope, reactivate auto build, and then assemble your contraption. There's also no way to put devices back into your inventory once you've taken them out, so if you miscount how many devices you need for a build, the extra ones will just go to waste. This also feels like nobody playtested it. It may seem like a small thing, but every aggravating design choice works to harm the overall experience. For example, and this isn't related to Link's powers, but I do need to talk about it because it drives me crazy. Allows you to accrue.
Alright, I'm back. Sorry.
This is a cool system, but the stable guy won't just give the rewards to you. He tells you there's a reward available, then you need to walk around to the side counter and watch him take his sweet time moseying on over to talk to you again, and like, why do this? It's the same guy. Just give me the reward. You already have it. You're going to give it to me. Why are you doing this? Why are you like this, Tears of the Kingdom? Why do you hate me? Then there's the stuff that was annoying in Breath of the Wild and didn't get fixed in this game. The scope and the camera, for example, are still separate features when they should really have been integrated back in 2017. You also can't mute the shrine sensor without turning it off, so you either have to deal with the obnoxious beeping or not use it at all. The controls are still clunky, with the run and jump button across from each other on the button layout. I actually play both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild with the A and B buttons reversed, and it makes a huge difference to be able to easily do a running jump, or to effortlessly take out and put away the glider. It makes more intuitive sense to have the button that takes out and swings the weapon be across from the button that puts it away, while the button that parries is next to the button that attacks. But there's still no way to dodge without locking the camera behind Link, a design choice that's 4 years older than I am. It's still way too easy to accidentally push the left analog stick too hard while running or fighting, and have Link crouch, rendering him slow, vulnerable to attack, and unable to dodge. The Blood Moon cutscene is skippable, but only if you press X and then plus, information that's never properly conveyed. Great Fairies still make you sit through their endless flavor text, still tell you about sec bonuses for the 100th time, and there's still no way to see what materials you need to upgrade your armor without going to visit a fairy fountain. Tears of the Kingdom also lets you upgrade your horses, which is a cool idea except for the fact that it's got the same problem as the armor system. If you want to see how many cooked meals you'll need to give to Melania for him to upgrade your horses, you have to go talk to him. And then there's the sages.
Sages.
In case you haven't played the game, please understand that the A button, the one used to interact with everything in the game, also activates all 5 of your Sage abilities as long as they're standing next to you. If a whole bunch of materials are lying on the ground and you're mashing the A button to pick them all up, it's not at all uncommon for Tulin to blow them off a sky island into the abyss, or for Yunobo to light them on fire. This is equally bad in combat, where the Sages are never where you need them to be when you need them to be there. It's very easy to hop on Minoru's back by accident, and then, since Link adopts Minoru's hitbox while he's riding her for some reason, you get hit. Also, for every other animal or vehicle
During editing, I recorded this part during editing because I didn't mention it in the original script.
that Link can ride in this game, pressing the X button will make him jump into the air and dismount. When you're riding Minoru, though, pressing the X button will activate her fuse ability. You have to press B and then either A or X to get off of her. This X to dismount muscle memory has been built up since 2017, and I end up coming up against it every single time I use Minoru. I don't have much footage of this, not because it doesn't happen, but because it's so annoying that I just never use the Sages. It doesn't help that they take up a ton of space on the screen, and every time you climb or glide, there's a distracting flash as they return to your hand. If they're all out in combat, you'll end up running around chasing the specific one you want to use, when that's time better spent just attacking the enemy directly. The Sages are not strong enough or convenient enough to justify having them out, besides Tulin, but even then he's often more trouble than he's worth. He'll often attack enemies and get their attention when I'd rather just sneak past them. And that can be true of all of the Sages, but Tulin's especially bad because he's got a ranged weapon. There's no easy way to summon or dismiss the Sages either. You have to open the menu and then manually activate or deactivate them, then close the menu.
Yeah.
This is the same Iron Boots bullshit that everyone hated in Ocarina of Time. It sucked then, and it sucks now. The only real improvement is the aforementioned ability to quickly swap new items from chests when your inventory's full. But given all of the things they didn't change, and all the new frustrating things they added, it's hardly enough for me to consider the UI and UX of Tears of the Kingdom up to Breath of the Wild's standard, let alone better than it. But enough of this talk of UI and UX, let's get into the real conversation here. Let's start by talking about the open world. What changed, what didn't, and what probably should have.
Re-exploring Hyrule.
When it was confirmed early in Tears of the Kingdom's development that they were reusing the map from Breath of the Wild, I was actually excited about it. One of my biggest issues with the story presentation in Breath of the Wild was the wealth of locations that had some sort of story that was implied but never explored, never developed. I mentioned a few of these already, like the mazes and the Forgotten Temple, but it's important to note that these points of interest were everywhere. There was untapped story potential around every corner. I wasn't worried about them recycling the world because I saw Breath of the Wild's Hyrule as fertile ground for this new story to grow out of. In Breath of the Wild, I rarely felt like my exploration was rewarded. At best, I'd find another shrine or a Korok seed, but that's at best. The joy was really in the journey. I loved combing through forests for ingredients, traversing the desert, climbing through the mountains, exploring the tropical regions. All of this served as intrinsic motivation to me when I played Breath of the Wild. Even if the extrinsic rewards weren't always, rewarding. Tears of the Kingdom fares even worse than Breath of the Wild in this sense, because at least Breath of the Wild was a new world with new content. I understand the appeal of using that world as a...
Okay. So, this is way too long of a video. It is 3 hours. So, I will not be doing the whole video in this video. I will split it up into different videos every single time. So, please do not flame me in the comments. Thank you. Goodbye, suckers.